This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, the Liberal Party takes action against a PC candidate over Tim Hortons gift cards. Campaign promises the Nova Scotia NDP releases its election platform. And getting students into polling booths. There's work being done to get young people voting this election.
Those gusty northerly winds sticking around tonight and as we work throughout the day on Thursday with showers, flurries, and then rain wrapping in for Friday. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. The Liberals have tried and failed to get a PC candidate disqualified from this election race before voting day. At issue is a gift card giveaway by the Progressive Conservatives at a Lunenburg Tim Hortons this past weekend. Our Jean LaRoche has the latest.
The Liberals have complained to Elections Nova Scotia. They've also asked the court to step in immediately. A hearing was scheduled, then the court issued this statement. Upon review of the petition, the Controverted Elections Act and case law, the court has determined it will not schedule an appearance for today's date. The petitioner has been asked to contact the courthouse after the November 26th election to have the matter placed on the docket.
We were looking to get an early hearing on it to try to get the matter wrapped up as quickly as we could and to hear the evidence. But ultimately it's up to the court to decide on their process, and they've made their decision, and so obviously we respect that.
The Liberals accuse PC candidate Susan Corkum-Greek of taking part in an event at a local Tim Hortons where a campaign worker handed out gift cards worth a cup of coffee. Liberals call that an attempt to buy votes. The PC leader suggests the Liberal response is far worse.
I think when you have a party volunteer who maybe made a mistake, we'll see what Elections Nova Scotia has to say about it. I think it's a very slippery slope to really kind of try to weaponize the legal system against a party volunteer who maybe made a mistake.
I really just dismiss that as tripe. It kind of comes from south of the border, Donald Trump and Megaland, and I'm sure Tim Houston's capable of doing his own thinking on the issue and not just regurgitating Donald Trump's talking points.
The campaign worker who bought the gift cards has resigned. Susan Corkum-Greek has not returned messages from CBC News. She'll remain on the ballot, and if she wins, the Liberals say they'll move ahead with their case to try to prevent her from taking her seat in the House. Jean LaRoche, CBC News, Halifax.
The Nova Scotia NDP has released its election platform. The document includes promises to boost healthcare services, build thousands of new affordable housing units, and put a temporary pause on the provincial gas tax. Those promises would cost about $1 billion each of the first 2 years of a mandate. But as Michael Gorman reports, NDP leader Claudia Chender says it's a price tag the provincial government cannot avoid.
NDP leader Claudia Chender says that creating more affordable housing is at the center of her party's election platform.
We know that if people can't afford housing, they can't be healthy, they can't afford their groceries and other necessities, because housing is the single largest driver of costs, and housing costs are out of control.
The party would spearhead the creation of 30,000 new affordable units through partnerships with nonprofits, co-ops, and other avenues. The NDP definition of affordable rent is no more than 30% of a person's income. It goes along with other affordability measures such as rent control and taking the HST off groceries, internet and phone bills, and heat pumps. The party would also create a low-income power rate. Chender says she'd also save people money through a temporary pause on the provincial gas tax. She says that would save 15 cents a litre and is a far cry from PC complaints about the federal carbon tax.
They want to fight with Ottawa. So we are telling Tim Houston that he can put his money where his mouth is. If he wants to axe the tax, help people to afford their gas.
During the tax holiday, Chender says her party would get busy improving public transit across the province. Services in the Halifax area would be expanded, the harbour ferries would be made free, and the NDP would partner with municipalities throughout the province to help with their transit systems. On healthcare, the party would create more collaborative care clinics, speed up the creation of more long-term care spaces, and boost services for women through increased access to sonographers, midwives, and surgical abortion. Chender's spending promises far exceed what the Liberals and PCs are proposing, but she says this is what's necessary to tackle the province's challenges with healthcare, housing, and affordability. Michael Gorman, CBC News, Halifax.
The riding of Northside Westmont gained some notoriety earlier in this campaign. That's after the PC candidate admitted he took information from the Liberals before he switched parties last month. The CBC's Kyle Moore has the story.
PC candidate Fred Tilley continues on the campaign trail, not deterred by the RCMP launch of an investigation over information he now says he took from the Liberal database after switching parties. Tilley told CBC's Information Morning Cape Breton that as a Liberal at the time, it was his information to take.
At the end of the day, it's the work from 2021 that I did and beyond, so it was really my information.
Tilley crossed the floor from Liberal to Progressive Conservative before the provincial election call. He says the data is not much different than what's available to all candidates who get a voters list.
At the end of the day, you have to look at where your support is. So in that list, it's all information that I garnered, knocking doors, making phone calls, day-to-day work in the office.
I would say people were definitely surprised, including myself. But look, people make choices. And Mr. Tilley made a choice. And Danny Laffin made a choice, and my choice was to run for the Liberal Party.
Liberal candidate Danny Laffin helped Tilley get elected in the last provincial election. He was supposed to run for the PCs in 2019, but was turfed by the party for failing to comply with internal disclosure process.
I really don't understand what actually happened in 2019. But I can tell you, like I said, it's all behind me.
Laffin says his goal is to be a strong voice in Halifax for his community. Meanwhile, Tilley says the odd person is concerned about why he switched parties. But he says they understand once he explains his decision.
For me, personally, it's more about my community. My community is number one to me, and whatever way that I can do the best for my constituents and the community as a whole, and Cape Breton, that's the way I'm going to go.
CBC reached out to NDP candidate Caitlin Armstrong a number of times, but she was not available for an interview. A bio on her election website says she is a service industry professional who turned her passion for sewing into a business. The voters will have their say on Election Day, November 26th. Kyle Moore, CBC News, North Sydney.
Well, Ryan is here with his first look at the weather. Ryan, you said we're going to have a change, but it was pretty dramatic.
Yeah, definitely a big change in the forecast today, Vern. Those cold temperatures, and then on top of that, the very gusty winds. Oh boy, yeah, high temperatures today. We basically only reached 1, 2, 3 degrees for most of the province. Little bit milder here in through the south and west. Back road did get to 5, but yeah, for sure, cold. And tomorrow, temperatures are going to be a little bit warmer. The winds will be a little bit lighter, but that said, it's still going to be a very chilly day with winds gusting 50, 60, 70 kilometers per hour, strongest winds in the east. This will be where we see the dampest conditions on Thursday as well, with the greatest chance for showers and a few flurries in the mix, especially early morning. So let's time it out. You can see that chance for flurries overnight into Thursday morning. That's going to hang around. And then as we move into the afternoon, what we're going to be seeing is this system offshore kind of wrapping its way in from east to west. And so that will be bumping our temperatures up into the afternoon for Cape Breton and eastern areas. Now, any flurry chances kind of coming to an end by Thursday evening with those temperatures ticking up. And then we're actually going to see temperatures rising overnight Thursday into Friday morning. And then, so yeah, for Friday, we're looking at temperatures in the high single, even a few low double digits, but we're looking at periods of rain. And this low, it's just going to sit and spin pretty much all weekend, keeping things unsettled, Vern. So we'll explain more with that on your 7-day forecast coming up in a few minutes.
Thanks very much, Ryan.
Thank you.
The MV Confederation should be back in service by December the 6th. That's according to the Northumberland Ferries. It's a few days earlier than expected. The boat has been out of service since crashing into the wharf back in September and damaging its bow visor. The company says a little more welding needs to be done, then the bow visor will be ready to be reinstalled.
Just based on what work remains, we expect to be in service sooner than the 6th of December. I'm not sure exactly what date, because as I mentioned before, it really comes down to that critical point of reattaching the bow visor, making sure everything fits, making sure it's tested successfully. We won't know that until we're on that day, so that's why the uncertainty continues.
The company says the collision was human error, not a mechanical failure. When the boat returns, it will do 4 round trips daily until the sailing season ends on December the 20th. A 21-year-old Windsor man is facing 10 charges for allegedly driving while impaired in a crash last year that left 2 people dead. In late August last year, first responders were called to Highway 14 in Windsor Forks for a crash between a Chevrolet Monte Carlo and a Ford pickup truck. 2 passengers in the Monte Carlo were pronounced dead at the scene. A 3rd passenger was seriously injured, as was the driver, who is the man facing charges. The 2 people in the truck suffered minor injuries. New data showed many Halifax lakes are experiencing water quality issues. Information was collected from about 70 lakes across the region for the past 2 years. Numbers show that 17 lakes, including popular urban ones like Bannock and Micmac, had high salt levels. Road salt often gets swept into the stormwater system, ending up in lakes. Too much salt can harm fish and plants in freshwater lakes and affect the oxygen levels. On Tuesday, Halifax Council asked staff to explore changes to stormwater and road salt plans.
Our lakes are stressed, and they're stressed because of development. They're stressed because of climate change. They're stressed because of things like road salt. And a lot of these most stressed lakes is in the urban core. So we really need to make sure that we do this work, we follow through on this work.
Mayor Andy Fillmore will also ask the provincial government to bring in standards for stormwater quality. Well, in the last provincial election in 2021, people aged 18 to 34 had the lowest voter turnout. But people are working to change that for this election. Andrew Lamb reports.
Advocates are working to get more young people voting in this provincial election. The last time Nova Scotians went to the ballot box in 2021, young voters had the lowest turnout.
Are you eligible? How do you register? Where can you vote? Those are all questions that students have, but that's even once they're realizing that there is an election and that, that they are important as voters.
Students Nova Scotia is hosting events like local candidate debates and providing election information to people on campus. Selesky also says party platforms need to prioritize student and youth issues.
A lot of students don't vote because they don't see themselves and their needs represented in government, but this is the process to change that. This is the time where students get to have their voices heard and make sure that the issues that they feel are impacting them in their communities are represented on a provincial scale.
Dalhousie student Katie Reed wants politicians to focus on the economy and affordability.
I have to work as a student to pay for everything, and it's hard because I would love to have all my time devoted to my studies, but I can't because I can't afford it.
Reed does plan to vote, but may end up being in the minority of people her age who do. In the 2021 election, just 39% of registered voters aged 18 to 24 actually voted. And for people in the 25 to 34 age group, it was even lower at 36.5%. With Elections Nova Scotia deciding not to print voter registration cards for this election, the executive director of a youth voter engagement organization says turnout is a concern.
So not having that physical card is a huge disadvantage to a young person who's never voted before and doesn't know where and how to vote, which polling station, what they need to bring.
New Majority has had teams on the ground for the recent elections in New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. Monday says the group prefers in-person voter engagement tactics like walking people to the polls.
That far and away increases turnout.
The Dalhousie and St. Mary's University student unions have secured advanced polling locations on campus. Andrew Lamb, CBC News, Halifax.
And tomorrow night, leaders from Nova Scotia's Progressive Conservatives, Liberals and NDP will come together for a live, commercial-free debate to discuss issues affecting Nova Scotians. Tom and Amy will be back at 6 o'clock tomorrow night for the 90-minute debate. You can watch the debate on your TV, CBC Gem, our Nova Scotia YouTube page streaming channel, and on our website. It will also be broadcast on CBC Radio 1. Ryan will be back next with the full weather forecast. See you in a few minutes. And Ryan is back with a full weather forecast. Well, Ryan, I felt it coming on last night, and I woke up this morning, and it was nothing like the days before.
Yeah, big change for sure. I mean, we've had such a nice fall too, with very few of these cold shots. Certainly none this cold. So it's an adjustment for sure for everybody. My kids today were kind of grumbling about the winter jackets as I zipped them up, and then they headed out the door and went, oh, okay, that's why. So yeah, for sure. And it's going to be another very chilly day tomorrow, another warm jacket day. Have a look at high temperatures today. Again, in case you missed it earlier, just 1 to 3 in most cases. Western Head at 4 and back row at 5. Canso also at 4. Those were our hot spots. And yeah, looking at the temperatures out there right now, it is a very chilly evening. If you're heading out for a dog walk, I'm guessing Fido will want that to be a bit of a short one. So we look at those winds sustained in the 20, 30, 40 range. Beaver Island sustained at 61. Sydney, 63 sustained wind right now, gusting just shy of warning criteria. So it has been howling all day in through Cape Breton, and you can see those winds across the mainland also very, very gusty. So as we move through tonight, what we're going to be seeing is the winds backing off somewhat, but still gusting to 80 across Cape Breton, as you'll see in just a second. It's all thanks to, well, this high, which is just off to the west, and we've got this low pressure system kind of spinning just off to our east. That is helping to just drive in this northerly flow, and the pressure gradient between these two systems is just really pumping in that northerly wind. Now, quick check on the rest of North America to let you know what's going on. And yeah, we can see the temperatures looking, again, very November-like. That warmest of air pushed well down to the south now. So yeah, 'tis the season indeed to see these ebbs and flows. And as we look at the temperatures tonight, we're going to be back near the freezing mark, as I mentioned just a moment ago. Cape Breton still gusting near 80 kilometers per hour tonight. We're going to be seeing a few flurries, especially higher terrain areas could pick up a trace to a couple of centimeters in Inverness and Victoria counties. Flurries mixing in along the Northumberland shore. Less likely to see accumulation there, but can't rule out higher terrain areas picking up a couple of centimeters. Northerly winds still gusting to 60 in central, still gusting to 50 in the west, and that's where we'll have the best chance of some clearer skies, and that'll be the case into tomorrow morning as well, with a mix of sun and cloud. I think early on, a little more sun than what this model is projecting here for the western half of the province, but things will certainly cloud up into the afternoon. Any flurries will change over to showers into the afternoon here for the Northumberland shore and even into Cape Breton, as those temperatures do bump up into the 4-5 range by the end of the day. Clouds really filling out here across the west. In fact, by tomorrow evening around this time, should be in the 6, 7, even 8 degree range, with those northerly winds, though, still driving in around gusting 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. Again, any flurry chances, Antigonish and back towards Sherbrooke will mix over to showers into the afternoon. Similar story from New Glasgow to Tattamagush and down to Sheet Harbour and in through the Halifax area as well. As we see that increasing cloud, we could see a few wet flakes mixing in with those showers before those temperatures do bump up, and we'll see that increasing cloud for the west as well. Now, this is Thursday night, 11 p.m. Note the temperatures ticking up as we move into Friday. We'll continue to see those temperatures bumping up with periods of rain wrapping in. And yes, by Friday afternoon, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, do I hear 11 for Cape Breton by 5 p.m. on Friday? Certainly not out of the question. This low is going to be wrapping in that milder air. It will then sit and spin overhead throughout the weekend. Rainfall totals, a little tough to nail down with a system like this coming from the ocean. A lot less readings, but the forecast model is doing a pretty good job, at least pretty good signal, that the heaviest rain is going to be across the north and into Prince Edward Island and Cape Breton. This is where we'll have the greatest chance of seeing amounts in the 30 to 50 range. North Shore, not so much here down in the South Shore, and I know you folks really need the rain there. We'll hope for some changes. Right now, not looking like it's going to be enough there. Showers Saturday, Sunday. Better chance for some sun late Sunday and certainly into early next week. But get ready. Keep the umbrellas handy, Vern.
Always. Thanks very much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Coming up, we speak to the Affordable Housing Association about a motion before Halifax Council to retract the proposed list of future encampment sites in the city. The new mayor of Halifax put forward a motion this week suggesting that 9 proposed encampment sites be removed in the HRM. He says the number of indoor accommodation areas has significantly increased. And to discuss that now, we have Michael Cabellin, who is the Executive Director of the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia. Michael, what's your reaction to that?
I think the mayor was really focusing on looking to remove or de-designate encampments that weren't activated initially. So places where they thought people could camp could be in encampments if they don't if they need them. I think he's not wrong to say we should be starting to have a conversation around what other options are available. In fact, I think we can all agree a tent is not a great place for anyone to live. There's better options, and to me it's often a distraction that we focus all of our attention on visible homelessness, which is where the tents that you can see in your community, not recognizing that most of the homelessness in our community is in fact invisible. And so the tent is a symptom of a system that really doesn't offer options. It offers more like warehousing, and we talk about those indoor options. Well, those work for many people. However, they don't work for the people that aren't choosing to use them.
And why would that be?
Well, I think the slide into homelessness, in a sense, is unique. It's a unique experience for everyone. But the choice at the end for those that choose to live in a tent or to choose an encampment, that comes at a place where they don't see the other options as really a suitable option at all. So someone who's living in a tent has determined a shelter, indoor shelter, isn't working for them in its current configuration or how it's being offered. We really need to think about, would you or I want to live in a shelter? No, we want to live in housing, in dignified housing. And the reality is we still have an greatly inadequate amount of the types of supportive housing that would be an option that the individuals who are currently living in tents would take. So you think about someone who's in an encampment, they're likely living with some type of mental illness. They're likely living with some type of disability or substance abuse disorder. Those are the things that are contributing to their choice to live in a tent. If we're able to offer them something that is permanent, something that isn't transient, something where they're not feeling like their personal safety is at risk, if that's the option they take, they'll take it. But those aren't the options that are often being offered to these folks. In fact, the highest acuity or the highest depth of need, or the people that I've described to you earlier, there's not a lot that will support them well. So they choose, again, the option that we find inconvenient, which is tenting, but they find safe for them.
And what is the current situation with encampments? Has the numbers been growing or reducing in any meaningful way?
Yeah, I think the number's kind of transient. So if you were to measure homelessness in our community, we only are able to actually measure the people that come to the system for help. There's likely a much larger number of individuals that are working out their homelessness every day. But for the numbers that we know, there's 1,323 people that we know of that are approaching the system of service providers asking for help. 926 of them are in some of those indoor options that we talk about, like the sheltered options like pallets or the more conventional shelters. But 164 people, according to our data, are still living in unsheltered options, right? So that's the tent or something outdoors or within the vehicle or those kinds of things. And then there's hidden homelessness, so people who are in corrections or in and out of healthcare, but are generally, if that's not where they are, won't have a housing option back to them. And so the other number that's really important to note is 883, which is what we call our active chronically homeless, or those are people that have been in this condition for 6 months or more. So the numbers are, I would say, plateauing due to the number of new resources that are being added, but I wouldn't say we're seeing the numbers come down yet. And it's not a closed population of people. New people present themselves to the system. Other people are being housed or are finding other alternatives. So it's not, these are the numbers we have today, but I would suggest that long term, we're heading in the right direction if we continue to add the types of resources. However, we're still not talking about the types of housing that will be made available for everyone. That's a longer game. We see government starting to make those kinds of investments. But to date, the biggest investment has been in shelter type solutions, which is convenient for us. We don't have to see people in those solutions, but they're generally still homeless. They still need something better than what we've offered them.
Now, during the mayoral campaign, and speaking of numbers going up or down, Phil Moore had suggested that people are coming from outside the HRM into the HRM because of the ease of setting up encampments. What's your data on that?
Yeah, we don't have none of the data suggests that there's an increase of people choosing to come to HRM because, somehow it's easier to be homeless here than in other communities. I think it's more visible in HRM. It's just more densely populated. Encampments are in places where people see them more. But right across Nova Scotia, unsheltered homelessness exists. It's just less visible. Nothing in our data suggests there's been this influx of people from across the province or the region into Halifax because they're somehow better supported here.
Now, one of the solutions that's been proposed, and we've seen some progress in that, is the creation of pallet homes. Are they a viable part of the solution to the problem?
Well, pallet homes are actually called pallet shelters, so it's just another form of shelter. It doesn't solve homelessness. It's not a permanent solution. It's better than an encampment. It's better than a typical conventional common shelter for many people. It's another option. So we talk about presenting people with options that might work for them. A pallet shelter certainly is a better option than a common open-spaced conventional shelter. It gives people privacy, it gives people access to certain kinds of services. They tend to be built out a little bit further from your dense core, so people have access to maybe the community they're from, as opposed to having to go somewhere else. So yeah, they're an option, but they're not housing. The tiny homes are an option of housing that hasn't existed previously, that have opened in Sackville recently. That's an option, but really, genuinely affordable housing is the best option for people, and if most people are offered housing that they can consider long-term and dignified for themselves, they'll take it. That's what we need to be bringing to the table for folks.
Michael, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thanks for coming in.
Coming up, as the Trump transition continues, Donald Trump meets with President Joe Biden in the Oval Office. And Swift Mania arrives in Toronto. Waves of Taylor Swift fans descend on the city ahead of the superstar's opening night concert. Welcome back. It's a day that Donald Trump has been wishing for since 2020. Today, he made his triumphant return to the White House and a chance to say goodbye to President Joe Biden. Katie Simpson reports from Washington.
Today marks a moment of celebration for Donald Trump and his Republican Party.
Congratulations. Thank you.
The president-elect returned to the White House to meet with President Joe Biden to ensure there is a coordinated and peaceful transfer of power.
Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So, good. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get.
Trump did not hold one of these meetings for Biden 4 years ago when the shoe was on the other foot. Trump refused to acknowledge his election loss with his attempt to remain in power, leading to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. But Trump's return to Washington with Republicans controlling the White House, the Senate, and now the House. It is the start of a remarkable political comeback. Trump will be working closely with Republican Senator John Thune, who was selected today by his colleagues to be the Senate Majority Leader.
We have a mandate from the American people, a mandate not only to clean up the mess left by the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda, but also to deliver on President Trump's priorities.
Thune is considered a traditional establishment Republican. In 2020, he pushed back against Trump's efforts to remain in power. And he's against Trump's plan to impose widespread tariffs on imports, which is something business leaders and decision makers in Canada will take note of. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
During his election campaign, Donald Trump promised mass deportations of illegal immigrants. He doesn't take office until January, but his promise has raised concerns about a surge of asylum seekers in Canada. Immigration Minister Mark Miller was asked about border security earlier today.
I think when it comes to our southern border and the U.S.'s northern border, you see there the alignment of interests and making sure that it is safe, that it is secure. We share information with our American partners, and we're able to apprehend folks that cross the border in a regular fashion or in a fashion where they're not entitled to do it.
An Israeli government spokesperson today said the government is pleased with the appointments that President-elect Donald Trump is making. That includes naming Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee ambassador to the Jewish state. The Biden administration continues to defend Israel, saying it will not limit military arms sales to the country. That is despite the fact aid groups say Israel failed to meet Washington's deadline yesterday to boost aid to Gaza. Sasha Petrusek reports on the aid situation.
There's two very different perspectives on what is going on in Gaza. Most of the world's aid organizations, agencies from the United Nations itself is describing a very dire situation when it comes to aid in Gaza. That there's not enough food. Certain areas are very close to famine, if not actually experiencing the famine right now. There is not enough equipment and materials for shelter. There's not enough medical supplies, clinics, hospitals. Those kinds of things are in very short supply. The U.S. put a limit on how long this can last. They said in 30 days that Israel had to solve the problem, had to get 350 trucks a day moving into the territory. That deadline expired. But despite the description from all of these aid organizations that work in Gaza, the U.S. government has said that Israel is trying to fix the problem and they're going to give it some more time. This is what they had to say from the State Department.
No one is up here, certainly I'm not, saying that the situation in Gaza or the humanitarian circumstances are rosy. It is a very dire circumstance, and what we need to see is we need to see these steps acted on. We need to see them implemented.
Now, Israel has a very different perspective of what the aid situation is in Gaza. Essentially, that there is no big problem. They are describing a situation where trucks are being allowed in. There's no barriers being put up, they say. even though they say that there are only about 76 trucks a day that make it into the territory, not the 350 that the Americans have said is absolutely needed. What is the problem? Well, they say aid organizations themselves are not bringing enough trucks, or the trucks aren't capable of moving around, or Hamas is stealing the food once it makes its way in there.
Our assessment is that there is enough food coming into the Gaza Strip. But if there is an organization that would like to increase the amount of food, all they need to do is coordinate that together with us. We have never placed a limit on the amount of humanitarian aid that can make its way into the Gaza Strip.
So, two very different perspectives about how big the problem is, but there is no question that people in Gaza are, in fact, having trouble getting food, getting shelter, and that problem doesn't seem to be changing very quickly. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Ukrainian officials say Russia has launched its first missile attack on Kyiv since August. It follows weeks of nightly drone attacks on the Ukrainian capital. The Ukrainian military said both ballistic missiles and missiles launched by strategic bombers landed in the city. The State Emergency Service of Ukraine released video showing rescuers putting out a fire in a building. The attack forced people to take shelter in an underground metro station. The latest assault raises concerns over the city's energy system and the prospect of long blackouts with winter coming. Meanwhile, a bomb planted under a car killed a senior Russian naval officer in occupied Crimea. A Kyiv security source says he was one of Ukraine's highest-ranking targets to date. Canada is leading a multinational NATO brigade in Latvia, conducting one of the largest military exercises of its kind in decades. Briar Stewart gives us rare access to the field maneuvers.
I'm on a military base near Riga, Latvia, and I'm in a Canadian LAV-6. This is a light armored vehicle, and they're basically doing a demonstration for the media here, but this is all part of a large NATO exercise called Resolute Warrior. It's the largest international exercise that Canada has led since the 1980s, and this is significant because Canada has helped to form a brigade here. There are 3,500 troops involved in this exercise. Over 2,000 of them are from Canada. And this is all part of a NATO effort to beef up security in the Baltics. Latvia shares a nearly 300-kilometer-long border with Russia. And after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the full-scale invasion which began in 2022, they really wanted to beef up security in the Baltics, and Canada is playing a big part of it. And part of this exercise is figuring out all of the logistics and how to integrate all of the different equipment and troops from different NATO nations. 13 countries are involved in this exercise, and there's going to be an annual exercise held here every year. Briar Stewart, CBC News, near Riga, Latvia.
10 years after Canada's mission in Afghanistan ended, a group of Afghan Canadians are breaking their silence about their pivotal role. They provided linguistic and cultural advice to the Canadian Armed Forces. But as Olivia Stefanovich reports, they still haven't been recognized.
We have been ignored. We have been discriminated.
They were the eyes and ears of the Canadian Armed Forces, saving lives in Afghanistan. But when they returned home, they were denied the same benefits and health coverage as other veterans.
Now we have PTSD. We are sick.
I have no health coverage. I have no help from the Department of National Defense. Not even a call, not even appreciation, not even something to invite you, even for Veteran Days. I have to invite myself.
When the Afghan war began, Canada's military recruited these Afghan Canadians as not just translators, but advisors to interpret the culture and conditions.
You didn't go anywhere outside the wire without your LCA, and they took exactly the same risks that we did, dressed in the same uniform that we had. The only difference is they weren't armed.
Indeed, they looked like members of the Canadian Armed Forces. But because they were civilians on temporary contracts, the Department of National Defense denied them benefits and health coverage.
It's a shame, actually. These people served in so many ways alongside military men and women who served. A lot was asked of them.
We should be moving heaven and earth now that we know about it to make sure these LCAs get the supports that they deserve.
Opposition parties say they plan to raise the issue with the Minister of Defence as soon as Parliament resumes next week.
Canada has a moral obligation to support the people who supported our country in the mission in Afghanistan.
Meanwhile, Canada's military watchdog is conducting her own investigation.
If the country and the department fails to act, I think they're going to have a very hard time making the case to recruit people to do this type of work moving forward.
In a statement, the Defence Minister's office says he's aware of the challenges and is working with DND's Ombud, who is expected to release her final report early in the new year. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
Security has been tightened for Taylor Swift's upcoming concerts in Toronto. A foiled ISIS-linked mass murder plot cancelled the Eras tour stop in Vienna this past summer. Toronto police say that people can expect to see a significant and visible police presence, both inside and outside the venue. But as Megan Fitzpatrick found out, nothing can dampen the excitement of the Swifties.
Welcome to the Eras Tour.
The highest grossing tour of all time is finally landing on Canadian soil. 6 sold-out shows start Thursday night, and fans couldn't be more excited whether they have tickets or not. Some fans lined up early this morning in frigid temperatures to buy Swift concert tour merchandise. The most sought-after item is the blue crew neck sweatshirt that's only available at the tour stops. It can't be bought through Swift's website. It sold out yesterday but was restocked in time for today's shoppers. Some of the shoppers do have tickets to the upcoming shows and can't wait to see Swift perform.
First time goer to the Eras Tour, so I'm just super excited to get a souvenir and bring home something home for my daughter.
We're just really, really excited to be here in Toronto and see the biggest artist in the world. You know, she has such a positive message, and to be surrounded by a community, it's just so positive. Everyone loves each other.
I'm super excited to be here. This was a birthday present for my wife after she opened up her new business back in Virginia, and just really excited to see such a positive message and such a kind of a strong female role model individual for our daughter and for other women, across the world.
As fans prepare, getting their outfits and glitter ready, the city has been preparing too, even naming an honorary route between City Hall and the Rogers Centre, Taylor Swift Way. The custom-made street signs are being auctioned off to raise funds for the Daily Bread Food Bank. Toronto's expecting thousands of visitors to come to the city, generating tens of millions of dollars in economic activity. The city has a crowd management plan in place. The Emergency Operations Center will be up and running on concert nights, and there'll be extra subways and buses on duty to get fans around. Now, fans who do not have tickets are being advised not to come down to the Rogers Centre. There'll be a perimeter set up around the stadium for ticket holders only. But there are plenty of festivities going on throughout the city, including a tailgate party at the nearby convention centre. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Toronto.
The PEI Woodlot Owners Association wants its members to increase the biodiversity of their woods. The group says a more diverse forest is good for the ecosystem. Nancy Russell reports.
The PEI Woodlot Owners Association is encouraging its members to be more diverse in what they grow in their woods. The goal is to provide habitat for endangered species, but also protect the forests from future storms.
People may be familiar with some of the plantations that were planted in the early 80s, where there was a monoculture of tree species planted. In those areas, it's uncommon to see a lot of wildlife, as only one species of tree cannot sustain the different species at risk that we have.
The Woodlot Owners Association received provincial funding to encourage more diversity in their forests. The first step is to find out what is in their woodlots now and what they can add to make them more diverse.
Manage the forest in a way where you're always harvesting wood, but in a sustainable way.
Sid Watts has had this woodlot for more than 40 years and planted many of the trees, including these red oaks that are now the highlight of this forest. But these woods were hit hard by post-tropical storm Fiona, and lessons were learned.
But I had a small plantation of white pine up behind my house too, and that blew down, and that
surprised me. I didn't think they would. So I think that the lesson I'm learning is that I'm looking to change some of my plantations that didn't get blown down, which are younger. I'm going to space them open wider, see if perhaps they will put down deeper roots, get a better rooting, and be able to stand the storms in the future.
For many years, Sid Watts grew and sold Christmas trees, but he's getting out of that now and slowly transitioning into different species. Watts was the 2023 Woodlot Owner of the Year and recently hosted a tour of his property, part of encouraging more sharing of ideas around biodiversity.
I think woodlot owners in general should be making some income from their land as well, if they can. We've managed to find different things that we can make from, and I've enjoyed it.
Next up for the association is a Woodlot Biodiversity Seminar, keeping the focus on making PEI forests healthier and better habitat. Nancy Russell, CBC News, Kilmuir.
Well, Ryan, it's going to be damp for the next few days.
Yep.
But I can take some consolation that it may inch up a little bit in terms of temperature.
Yeah.
Or maybe centimeter up a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Temperatures creeping up through Thursday night, and into Friday. Those temperatures are just going to continually rise. So A little bit of good news there, but yeah, it's going to come at the price tag with some damper conditions for sure. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day. This one we're going to zoom in east of Halifax in the Porters Lake area, Bell Lake to be exact. And have a look at this, just an absolutely stunning halo shot. You can see the nice reflection in the water. Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks to Janice Young for sharing this. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. Keep them coming. So many great picks coming into the weather inbox, even in this time of year as the leaves are starting to really, not too many left now on the trees. Now, as we look at Thursday, again, note those temperatures in Cape Breton by evening, bumping up into the 7 to 8 range. The mainland only getting into the 3 to 5 range, but those temperatures, again, will continue to rise through Thursday night. Those northerly winds tomorrow will still be gusting 50, 60, 70 kilometers per hour. Could see some gusts again through tonight into the 80 kilometer per hour range for Cape Breton. Those winds will continue to ease a little bit into tomorrow morning. And then for Friday, looking at, again, temperatures mildest in the east as we get into some double digits by Friday evening. And it's all thanks to this low, which is offshoring, backing its way in from east to west with that rain wrapping in. And that low is just going to kind of sit and spin. The wettest conditions will be Friday, but lingering showers into the Saturday and Sunday time period. Maybe a couple of breaks of sun early next week, but it's a pretty unsettled pattern for sure.
All right. Well, at least we have a little something to look forward to.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, one of the most famous paintings in the world is undergoing a very delicate and very public restoration in the Netherlands. The painstaking process of cleaning and repairing Rembrandt's The Night Watch is expected to take years.
The painting will decide the pace, so we can't say, well, it's ready in a year or it's ready in 2 years. No, I think the varnish removal will probably be around a year, and then you can really see what the damages are, how we have to restore it in the best way possible.
Which measures 3.6 meters by 4.3 meters, was painted in 1642. Several conservators are currently removing a layer of varnish to reveal the painting's original depth and color.
The next stage will involve the most extensive restoration of the artwork to repair damage and help preserve it for future generations. The painting will remain on display throughout the process. Should be interesting to see how it all plays out.
I'm looking forward to it. And just a reminder that tomorrow night our show will be preempted by the debate special. That's hosted by Tom and Amy with all three party leaders running live from 6 until 7:30 p.m. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.